11:02, so we'll go ahead and start. We have a lot to cover today, so we'll go ahead and start now. I am Manisha Mishra, the Program Director at Alabama Possible, and would like to welcome all of you to the college admissions process navigation during remote learning. Now, this webinar is a panel discussion where experts in the field of admissions process speak to some of the most common questions that educators have when they are navigating the college admissions process. In addition, they will also share insights, important insights and suggestions into the admissions process that will equip educators to adapt to remote, socially distanced college counseling practices and create focused tools for their students to apply to college. We would, at this point, like to recognize our sponsors and partners. As you see, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama and Protective, they support the work we do. And we always work in collaboration with Alabama Commission on Higher Education, Alabama Community College System, and Alabama State Department of Education. And we are grateful for all the support that they provide us, and they actively participate in the work that we do. Housekeeping, please keep your microphones on mute at all times to avoid feedback while speakers are speaking. Then this webinar will be recorded and posted to our YouTube channel, and we will send the link in a follow-up email. And during the entire presentation, you can submit your questions on the chat feature, and we'll come back at the end and ask those questions. This is our social media, so you can follow us either on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And we are soon going to probably be on TikTok too. So you can, we are still not there, but we'll be there soon. And our handle is at AL Goes to College, the number 2. So I'll start off by giving a little background about this campaign. It is the Alabama Goes to College campaign. So this is in collaboration with Alabama State Department of Education, and like I mentioned before, with support from Alabama Community College System and Alabama Commission on Higher Education. Now, what this campaign is actually, it seeks to increase the number of first-generation and low-income students who pursue post-secondary education by assisting high school seniors with college admissions process. Towards that end, we have created easily accessible resources for educators in the high school so they can support and assist their students to apply. Now, there are 3 components of the campaign. The first one is the Cash for College, which is FAFSA, otherwise FAFSA completion. And this campaign seeks to increase the number of first-generation and low-income students who pursue post-secondary education by assisting high school seniors with the FAFSA completion. And how we do it is we kind of follow the educate the educator model, where we assist the counselors and the career coaches and any educator in high school on how they could help their students. The next one is the Alabama College Application Week. Now, this week is when colleges and universities in and around Alabama, they waive off their application fees. This was held in the month of October last year. And so students can apply. And that is one of the barriers that we try to remove for students to apply to post-secondary education, whether it's a 2-year or a 4-year college or any kind of technical certification. And the third one is a College and Career Decision Day. During this day, which is held usually in the month of May, we recognize students for the choices that they have made, whether they choose to go to a 2-year college, whether they choose to go to a 4-year college, whether they choose to go into military or the workforce. So we celebrate each and every student for the choice that they make. So why post-secondary? Higher education, actually, we have seen it determines the future of our nation. Not only college graduates are half as likely to be unemployed as those with only a high school degree, they're also more likely to vote and be leaders in their communities. So the economic, health, and social viability of a democratic society is actually determined by the education of its citizens. Now, if you all will look at it, this is the unemployment rate by educational attainment, and this was released in 2019. That is the last report that we have. So if you go from less than a high school diploma up to an advanced degree, the unemployment rate keeps falling immensely. Now, this is another one which shows unemployment rates and earnings by educational attainment. Again, this is from 2019. And this data is for people above the age of 25, and earnings are for full-time wage and salary workers. So the sources are US Bureau of Labor Statistics and current population survey. So you'll see that if students have a less than a high school diploma and their unemployment rate is at 5.4%, which they earn only 592 a week. So this is the median weekly earnings. So as we go higher, so the more educated they are, the more barriers to prosperity are removed through this. And that is the main aim of Alabama Possible, to statewide try and help remove the barriers towards prosperity. So this is our help desk. If you or any of your students have any kind of questions regarding the college admissions process, whether it's FAFSA completion, college application, you can call directly at 334-316 and 6155. And we have able people who can walk you through that process, and they can connect you to the right people in the different colleges if you're seeking to reach out to them. So now we will move on to our panel discussion. The panelists are Amanda Hardy, Director of Admission, Birmingham Southern College. Amanda, if you'll wave. Carrie Watkins, Senior Admissions Counselor at Alabama A&M University. Kathleen Stallings, Director, Office of Undergraduate Admissions, University of Alabama at Birmingham. And Neil Scott, Director of Strategic Enrollment Management, Alabama Community College System. This panel discussion will be facilitated by Keela Lawrence. She is the Program and Communication Coordinator at Alabama Possible. Keela, all yours.
Perfect. So now that we have everyone where we can see everyone, I'll just say thank you everyone for being here, audience and panelists. We are going to jump right in. I will say we do have some questions lined up, but please feel free to use that chat box to send in any questions. Our representatives here, they are well informed about their specific organizations or schools, so they are here to answer your questions. So my first question is, what changes have been made statewide in regards to college admissions? This is a question for anyone.
I guess I can start with the Alabama Community College System, because we are a state agency and we have 24 colleges. There have not been any sweeping policy changes that have been made due to COVID-19, but because our colleges were already open enrollment and did not require an ACT for students to be admitted to our colleges, those colleges have really loosened up more on placement, whereas we do use ACT for placement. They may have loosened up some on that. But really for us, no sweeping policy changes. We do have some of our colleges who use ACT for scholarships as well, but they may have changed those. Again, nothing statewide for us, but our colleges have been given leeway to make those decisions as they deem appropriate for their schools.
And that segues well into the next question for those of you at your own respective institutions. I know you can't speak to statewide specifically, but what changes have been made at your respected institutions?
Well, one thing is, and this is for Alabama A&M University in Huntsville, Alabama. One thing is that we have, kind of like Neil stated earlier, we kind of backed away from the ACT for admissions, ACT or SAT for admissions purposes. However, it is still in place for scholarship purposes. So I know that's going to get into some questions later down the road, but that's the major change. And as far as our freshmen enrolling and having to have an ACT for placement, our placement office and our freshman advisors are working with students on a case-by-case basis to get them enrolled and advised and enrolled in the appropriate classes where they are academically.
So UAB went test optional for both admissions and merit scholarship consideration for freshmen entering for 21. So we have not made a decision going forward beyond that year, but we are test optional. And with that, you can choose between 3 options: submitting ACT or SAT, submitting PSAT or pre-ACT, or not submitting scores. The other thing I'll say is that we've made some great strides in accepting official emailed and electronic documents from high schools, which in years past, it'd been sort of a taboo case-by-case basis where we'd have to get special permission to accept electronic documents. And now the pandemic has really forced us in a good way to figure out the process to accept official email documents. And we will not be going back. I think that we've figured out the process, and especially for our high school counselors, college counselors, to know that we are accepting official transcripts or official documents that can be emailed and uploaded by the specific admissions counselor is taking a huge barrier down for those interested at UAB.
Amanda Hardy here from Birmingham Southern College. We have been test optional for a couple of years already, so that's something we've been doing. We are reviewing students who are applying test optionally for merit-based scholarships as well without any test scores. So continuing with that. And also going off of what Kathleen said, we are also accepting email documents, and it's certainly, this pandemic has led us to a place of creativity in many different ways, right? So sometimes students will see like a screenshot. Students have taken a picture of their transcript and we're like, okay, we can see the grades, we can see GPA. All right, let's do it. So obviously, we will be looking for final official for all enrolling students, but for the application process with the test optional, we are still continuing with that process. We've been doing it for a couple of years. So while I'm new here to Birmingham Southern College, my staff has already been prepared and teaching me a lot about how we've been doing things in the past. So I think that's been helpful that we weren't transitioning for that as well. And so we've been really just trying to work with the students as best we can and in getting their applications complete and in any way that we can. So
Same here. We're accepting the email documents. As a matter of fact, I was checking my email prior to this this webinar, and I had some transcripts from a high school that I just forwarded on to our processing staff in the office, and those students are being accepted as we speak. And that's from an email that was sent this morning. So as opposed to waiting 5 or 6 days on mail, you're able to close the gap on students' admissions and scholarship processes a lot quicker because you're able to accept those email documents.
And I feel that also helps the students know quicker, like, oh, am I finally accepted into this school, instead of waiting for my snail mail of a transcript to get there. It allows you to let them know, like, hey, we've accepted you, we choose you, and that allows them to make their decision easier. So I've heard a lot of you all saying that you have the test optional. So how does that look in terms of receiving scholarships? So is it based on GPA, or how are y'all disseminating scholarships with the test optional feature?
I'm sure it varies case by case, but for the upcoming enrollment year, UAB looks at GPA and strength of high school curriculum.
At this point, we've not made the decision to go test optional for scholarships. There's some discussions that are going on, but as of now, we're not there yet. So unfortunately, I don't have anything to add to that.
At Birmingham Southern, we are offering merit-based scholarships based on the GPA, the rigor of high school coursework. And we do also have additional application-based scholarships that students can apply for that we are looking to do, I guess test blind is really the word. And so even for students that have sent out us some scores. Since we do have students that are in the pool that are test optional, we are going to be looking at those, all the same, their application, their essay, not necessarily taking their scores into consideration, which actually is a little bit new for us this year. So
I would second.
Should have answered that before.
I would second Amanda. It's come to my attention that the combination of test blind or test optional admissions with test blind scholarships it's a hard concept because it's just so very new and we haven't worked out all the language. And so I've received quite a number of appeals to switch a test option because the understanding from the student or a parent or a school counselor was that in order to be considered for a scholarship, it doesn't matter if you're test optional for admissions, you must have a test score on file for scholarships. So I think one of our challenges and opportunities for growth in the next year is to figure out that communication and to make sure that we are communicating appropriately to our constituents to make sure that they know that it is that the test policies are clear and that students are educated on just the vocabulary. Just now we said test blind, test optional, there's all sorts of new vocabulary around standardized testing that we need to educate ourselves and our different constituents around. So I think one of our initiatives throughout the spring and summer is just an education for our prospective students.
Right, and for ACCS, again, we have 24 colleges, and that answer is going to vary by college, and so it's important for guidance counselors and students to know what community college is in their area and what the procedures at that school would be, because there are some colleges that do still require ACT for, or at least as of a few months ago, required ACT score for some of the scholarship opportunities, but many of them do not. So that's something to look into on a case-by-case basis.
And I can respond briefly to the question that came in the chat about rigor. It is according to what the school offers. So we're trying to compare apples to apples as best as possible. And of course, we always want insight from a school counselor or a school profile. We want to have the most up-to-date information as possible, especially when it comes to understanding rigor. But we are in no way faulting someone for the opportunities available at their high school. We are looking within the context of their situation in high school.
And thank you for answering that. I was like, oh, I'm gonna ask that right now. If you all didn't get a chance to see in the chat box, someone asked, what about students that come from smaller schools? Because every school isn't going to be an IB school. Every school isn't going to be a magnet school. So they were just wondering about the offerings for based on rigor at different schools. If anyone else wants to touch on that, let me know.
I think Kathleen really covered it. We're looking at how a student is doing within their high school, how they're succeeding within their environment. We're looking at if there are honors level courses available, did they take advantage of them? We're looking at so we do look at that high school profile and try to Google it if we have to, if we don't have it in the transcript, so that we are getting as much information as we can to help a student. I mean, that's really what we're looking to do. We're looking to admit students. So we try to get as much information that we can to admit them and then go from there. So. And
as Alabama A&M transitions to test optional for scholarships, those types of things will be evaluated apples to apples, as Kathleen said earlier. To look at the offerings of the institution and what the student chose to take in that.
I will say that as I've been reviewing more email documents, having a key for the names of classes is really important because schools may not have standardized or excuse me, systems or counties might not have standardized names of classes. And it's important for us to have some sort of key so that we can correlate what achievement math is to achievement math at XYZ school in XYZ county equals geometry 1, that sort of thing. So the school profile and even a key that might be provided in an email document or along with an official transcript is very, very helpful.
So since this pandemic, what has been the most challenging thing that you've witnessed relating to college admissions? Well, we could start with Neil, if you feel comfortable. We want to give everyone time.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I think the hardest piece of this has just been to see how the students and their families have had to respond. At ACCS, of course, we serve some of the same students that our four-year colleges are considering as well. But there are other students who may not be able to be considered at a four-year college, or may not be able to afford attending a four-year college, or think they can't afford a four-year college. And they and their families, in a lot of cases, have been more sensitive to loss of job, loss of income, to just the simple fear of leaving their house due to a pandemic. Many of them have faced issues of parents now having to be at home to be with their children who are virtual learning. There's so many factors that we're all thinking about and talking about every single day. But I know for me and my family, my wife and I have been able to continue and stay in work, and our son attends a school that is not doing virtual learning right now. So that has not hit us like it hits a lot of families day in and day out. And so I think that's probably been the hardest thing, and what we have seen our community colleges do, and our system, and the way that we've responded to that. Just for example, with CARES Act funding, we bought 10,000 laptops to be able to pass out to students who are having connectivity issues, who did not have hardware access to be able to log into classes. A lot of our colleges have made major Wi-Fi upgrades to be able to allow students to come and just sit in a parking lot and submit papers. And that's something that I've seen our schools respond really well to. But I think that's been the most challenging part of it, is just to see the challenges that our students and their families are facing.
Anyone else? Carrie, do you want to have anything to add to that?
Well, I mean, I think one of the challenges for our institution is access to students. A lot of times, a lot of our interactions were face-to-face. So having that face-to-face be taken away, and this be the Zoom platform or the virtual platform be the mode of reaching students. Sometimes we found, especially towards the end of last semester, that students were tired of looking at a screen. So our viewership numbers had just kind of trended down over the course of the semester, because there was so much virtual. I think last year's word was vegan. 2 years' word was vegan. Last year's word was virtual. So I think that everyone's just kind of overrun with the virtual world. So we saw the access to our students kind of dwindle a little bit. Thankfully, we're still able to maintain the somewhat of a viable pool, and we're working that pool. And what that has allowed us to do is to work with the students that are in the pool a little bit more, and get to know them a little bit more on a personal level, get to know the stories of the loss of jobs and the change of lifestyle that this pandemic has forced all of us to get in, to deal with parents that are sick or ill, to deal with parents that are having to wait for documents to come in because we're waiting on a counselor who's waiting on a family member that's, so it's allowed us to focus more intently on the students that are in the pool, as opposed to chasing applications to fill up the pool, if that makes sense.
I would absolutely agree that the individual connections that we've been able to make have been considerable. And it's a sad thing or an unfortunate thing that we aren't able to be in person doing visits, doing programs. But I think my last tally is that we had over 3,000, we've had over 3,000 individual Zoom or phone meetings with students since March of last year. And yes, they were just individuals, right? But we would have not had that time for those individuals had we also been traveling like a normal travel season. So it's exciting to have that kind of individual connection. I'd say that the biggest impact for us in general, for staff and for students, is uncertainty. And that's just underlined 3 times because I have to, on a daily basis say, this is the policy as of 10 o'clock this morning, or this is the policy for the end of the month or what have you. So it's very important that those lines of communication stay open because it's uncertain. And I want to tell all of the students that are, in our pools, right? Just come with me, just come along. I promise I will give you the information. I promise that I will keep you informed, but please just come with me on this journey because it's so uncertain. And that's really difficult for families that are planning on a huge investment, no matter where they're attending. So that getting a family to invest in something that they've only seen on a screen is quite difficult. And I think that the tools that have been put in place are very, very helpful. But still, you want to be able to touch and feel and get a sense for that experience and the uncertainty that exists when you can't do that is a huge challenge.
I would agree. I also feel like Carrie mentioned like the Zoom fatigue. I feel like there's just fatigue in general, right? I mean, we're just, by the end of the day, it's like, okay, everything I thought I knew yesterday has changed. I'm like, so just from that point of view, right, we're exhausted. But I think the biggest challenge we've seen in our admissions is just that lack of relationship that we've had in years past, right? We start meeting students, in their high schools, and we start to create those relationships. And, by this time of the year, we can put a face with a name. And now we can put a conversation with a name, but, not necessarily a face with a name. And I think that's hard on our end from admissions, but obviously I think the bigger picture of that is, the students are I'm sure feeling that without probably being able to describe it because we do this every year, whereas this is their year doing it, right? So they're not, I hope they're not feeling like we're, bothering them. But, these people are reaching out so much, but as Kathleen said, we're here to help. Come with us. Come on this journey with us. We will help you navigate this as the flashing lights change every day. But that's really been the biggest challenge is that lack of relationship building because it's had to have been virtual and students haven't been attending as many these virtual events. They're exhausted by the end of the day, right? They've done virtual school and now we're like, also come and do this virtual thing. We understand, but we're also trying to put the information out there for them. So I think that's certainly been a challenge we recognize.
COVID-19 has most definitely given us a theme of uncertainty. So with this theme, this overarching theme of uncertainty, what are you looking for in an ideal student? And it has that changed for you all in any sense of, each student is unique, but you're looking for certain things. Has that changed with COVID-19?
I think so.
I'm seeing it.
I don't think it's changed for us at ACCS, but I think we need to, and as a state, we need to reiterate that everyone has the opportunity to better their life and to better their circumstance, and sometimes that first step is just placing a phone call to an admissions counselor or to an advisor to say, hey, here's what I'm thinking about. I'm afraid that because of the pandemic, I'm going to lose my job, and I'd like to set myself up so that I can be in a better situation later if that does happen. Or, hey, God forbid, the next time something like this comes around, I want to be ready for it. And so I think the ideal student for ACCS is just anyone who wants to better their circumstance and set themselves up for success in the future.
Well said. I don't think any of us can add anything to that. I think that's what we're all looking for.
So I have one last question before we get into questions from the audience. So audience, hint, hint, please send in your questions before we get to that. We want to make sure we get those answered. So what do you recommend for the students and the educators going forward, and just to make a smooth transition from high school to higher education or post-secondary education, like it just tips or anything that they can relate to their students? We can start with Amanda.
Great. I really feel like the biggest tip and recommendation really comes off of what we were just talking about is having the students, encouraging the students to communicate with us, with their admission counselors, with our office, and whether it's those fears or questions or just where they are in the process, we're happy to help. But if the students aren't responsive to us, we can only do so much to help them. So I think that the best way to make a smooth transition is really just to keep those communication lines open.
I'd say that the phone is back. That we want to be on the phone with students, with counselors, with parents. With all this Zoom fatigue, a phone call is kind of a respite. So jumping on the phone, getting a quick answer to something, we want to be available to students. I think also with the pandemic, we were forced to assess our online assets very, very quickly to make sure that they were shored up and accurate and tight once everyone went virtually, because we knew that the traffic would be driven to our website. And so I would say that, websites have been sort of a throwaway for institutions in years past. Maybe, I won't say all, but you have to have a website. A school has to have a website. But I really think that has changed in the past year, whereas organizations, businesses, institutions have had to really turn an eye to what's available online to make sure that they're providing as much information upfront as possible, because we are all in front of a screen. And so in years past, where you'd say, oh, here's our website, and you tag it onto the end of a presentation or a high school visit, it's so much more important now because everything can and is being done online. So I know just for UAB, our website got a huge overhaul over the summer to make sure that it was navigable, and to make sure that things were easily found, to make sure that everything was up to date as it pertains to prospective students, because we knew that the focus was shifting to fully kind of screen. I'd also say that social media has played a huge part with UAB's outreach to students. So again, screens are in front of our faces, social media is in front of our faces. We strive to have our accounts not only engage students or whomever wants to follow, but educate. So there's a true balance between engagement and education, and providing true, tangible tips, suggestions, steps for application, steps for scholarships in social media. It's no longer sort of a side hustle for an admissions office. It is upfront. It is in our focus to make sure that those things that we are putting out, website, social media, etc., are not only engaging, but also educational.
Yeah, I think if I had any advice for the educators or for the guidance counselors, I know there are so many schools right now who are taking every possible precaution to stop the spread of this virus. If there are any smaller schools or any smaller school systems who are willing to have visitors from colleges, I know from speaking on behalf of our 24 colleges, our admissions people would be glad to show up in a mask, put a bucket of hand sanitizer on the table, and make sure that they are keeping a socially appropriate distance from students. But again, as Carrie mentioned earlier, just having access to those students it's not only important for us, but I know for me, when I filled out my first application when I was a senior in high school, that triggered me filling out other applications. And so it got my mind thinking about it. It's spurred conversations at home. And that's what I fear, is that because these students are not able to have these conversations in the volume or as early as they previously did, that those conversations aren't happening at home, and they're not applying to as many schools. And so I think that if your specific school is willing to have someone come in, call one of the colleges that you have a good relationship with, or call your local community college and just set up that conversation. And I think if there's a school in Birmingham who is willing to bring in Lawson State or Jeff State, what you'll probably see is that student also applying to Birmingham Southern and UAB, just because, again, it has their mind thinking in that direction.
And I'll kind of round it out. The easiest people to cold call are people in admissions. I think Amanda said something earlier that really resonates. This is a lot of these parents and students' first time around, but this is our everyday. So whereas you might think it's a silly question, or you just you're embarrassed to ask. We've heard it before, and we're probably going to hear it again. And it's our job to give you as much information as we possibly can to make this transition easier for the student and for the parent, because a lot of the hesitation comes from the parent. Sending their child away 5-6 hours away in a pandemic. I mean, they want to make sure that their child is safe. They're going to be safe on your campus, and we're the easiest people to strike up a conversation with. We are, I guess, outgoing by profession, so it's very easy to have a conversation with us. And if we feel that we need to turn our personalities up to make you feel more comfortable, that's what we do.
Carrie, that was a great roundabout. I think everybody kept nodding. So that was the last question from me. I am going to now turn it back over to Manisha.
So, I wanted to share something. One thing is that all of us have had challenges during this pandemic, right? But one thing I really wanted to acknowledge is the work the counselors, high school educators are doing is commendable. And it has been really a pleasure to see even higher education institutions, whether it's 2-year or 4-year, they have pivoted really well to kind of, like you were talking about the uncertainties, Kathleen. So, to be able to handle the situation, and Zoom fatigue is always there. Like I myself sometimes do not sign up for webinars because I'm tired the entire day I've been in front of the computer. So that, given all that, it is just commendable how everyone has risen to the occasion and everybody is working for the student. That is all of our ultimate goal. I think that has been, that's just been great to see that happen. And, I have working with other community-based organizations who are working for FAFSA completion with other school systems. It's been great seeing how cooperative the financial aid officers have been in the different colleges. And we would advise that to our educators or to our students also to reach out to the financial aid officers in the colleges that you have selected, because they have been very responsive. And of course, if you reach out to your admissions, to the admissions offices, they will connect you to the right people too. So it is, and it is just pick up the phone now. And it's a good thing that everybody is available on the phone now, because, Kathleen, like you mentioned, if you all were traveling, nobody would be there. Like there would be people, but, not at the intense level that it is at right now. So it is a question of communication, I think, overall, just reaching out to, people who know what is going on. So thank you to the panelists, but I'll hand it over to back to Keela so she can go through the questions that have been asked in the chat session.
do have some questions. So the first one is, have you all seen an increase in applications or FAFSA or anything like that? So I'll ask, have you seen an increase or have you seen a decrease? We'll take that both ways, and whoever wants to start us off can.
We've seen a decrease in the number of applications, but yet kind of a steady stream of enrollment deposits. So I think we're not far off. We keep, my director is meticulous with data, and we have data tracking back 6 years. And we always do a 3-year trend, and we're not far off from our 3-year trend. We're a couple of hundred off, but in the grand scheme of things, when you're a couple of thousand applications off, a couple of hundred deposit applications off, we're kind of in the same ballpark.
So I'm new here, so I'm just gonna preface that. I wasn't here last year. So our numbers are up from last year. But last year's numbers were down. So again, new here, can take credit for none of this. While our application numbers are up compared to last year, looking at that 3-year trend, we would like to see more applications. So while we had that February 1 as our published application deadline, we are still open. We are still accepting applications. If you have any students that are interested, send them our way. Application online is always free, bsc.edu. So just a little plug there.
Shameless plug.
I'm new. I got to keep my job, Carrie.
I would say our applications are up and the trends look good, but I do think that there is, along with that uncertainty, there's a reticence to make the decision until there's some more answers about what's college going to look like in the fall. So we are trying to address those questions of uncertainty for our students that are looking to deposit and looking to enroll. But I think that that's what we're going to be working with for the most part in the spring and summer, is those individual conversations about how is this going to look for the student in particular situation. What's class going to look like for you, particularly for your major? And a lot of that is unknown. There's still lots of questions to be answered about what certain settings are going to look like. So I think that we are going to have quite the yield season and lots of conversations still to be had to make that final decision. But apps and admits look strong.
Applications are going to vary school by school, but what I can say confidently is that FAFSAs are down across the state. FAFSA completion is down right now, and I think that makes it all the more important. Talking about earlier, if there is any sort of level of comfort about bringing in an outside guest from one of the local colleges, I know that our colleges historically have held FAFSA nights, and they've made sure that they've gone in and utilized a school's computer lab to be or technology lab to be able to help families complete the FAFSA. And that's something that our people are still open to, again, doing that in a socially in a pandemic-minded, responsibly way. But that's something that I think we do need to try to address somehow as a state, is getting that FAFSA completed, because again, we all know that our students won't go to college if they're not sure whether or not they can afford it.
I'll second that and just say also verification. So roughly 30% of students are selected for verification, and it doesn't have anything to do with you filling out the FAFSA wrong or incorrectly. So the education element is so important because it takes additional steps. It's a hoop to jump through, but you have to jump through it. And so we have special nights designed to talk to students and families about verification or about FAFSA completion. And I will say, I saw a question come in about how late. UAB does not have a FAFSA deadline, so.
Neither do we. Sorry.
Same with us. We'll have students who complete their application for admission and their FAFSA on the last day to enroll, and they'll be taken care of just like somebody who did it much earlier in the process.
That's right.
Yes. So we certainly encourage those to be done, earlier, just so that we can get that information to students and have that discussion of, can you afford this? And, can we, are there more scholarship opportunities? But, there's, too late would be after, classes start, right? We want to give you enough time to get rolled and get going. So we don't have a deadline for that either.
So I have another question. Oh, Manisha.
Give me one. Neil, I wanted to add something. There's a comment on the chat from one of the counselors when you mentioned about financial aid officers going into schools and all. So it's a shout out to the community colleges. She says, I miss that so much. That was the main way we got ours completed. It was due to the help of the community colleges. So I wanted to make sure we acknowledge that.
Yes, thank you for saying that. We're it's our pleasure to be able to do it, and of course it's a boom for our colleges to be able to go in and have access to those students. So again, we want to do that, and we will be responsible if you'd welcome us in. So thank you.
Thank you for that. So we are circling back to the transcript conversation, moving away from snail mail, but one of the participants wanted to know, which transcript service do you all use? I know you said you're still accepting email, but which service do you use?
Any of them. Truly, our enrollment operations office will figure out how to accept any official transcript from any provider. And for me in particular, for UAB in particular, when we say emailed transcripts, we mean from the high school. So not from the student. So it can be an official email from the school counselor or a school official, but we will figure out how to get any transcript from any service provider.
Does everyone accept everyone? I don't want to assume that blanket statement for everybody.
Yeah, our colleges have really, because of the pandemic, have really, again, have typically been pretty accessible as far as getting documents to our admissions offices. But even because of the pandemic, just even more so. And so, yeah, I think that you'll find that whatever service it is that you're using, and if there's an email that's coming from the school, it will be received well by our admissions staffs.
Gary, Amanda, do you echo the sentiments?
Well, we will work with the services that are, and especially for the email directly from the counselors. We do accept those, but any services we'll try our best to figure out how to get those downloaded. We don't want to say we do one and not the other and have that be a hindrance. We'll figure it out.
Perfect. So we do have one question. So it says, this person noticed their seniors seem a little bit lost this year, and they understand why, but they're working with them to walk through these strange times. So how can they encourage them to trust the process, especially when it's hard to see the normal process?
I mean, I think going back to what we said before, we've all done this before, right? This is new for the student, but if they could just, trust the fact that we've been through this, right? There's definitely changes and differences, but overall, the application process and, we want to get these kids into college is the same. So, we're willing to be flexible. I think that's my vice president's word of the year is flexible. We're being flexible this year, and learning how to kind of bend to what we can do to help the students. So, if they can trust us, the counselor, the admission counselor, our staff, and your staff, we're here to help them for sure.
Absolutely. I would say I'll add another T word to that. So trust that we are professionals that want to help move students through the process, but also the students need to be tenacious. It's important that a student is looking for answers and not just letting things happen to them. And so it really is always impactful, and it's not going to ever be annoying. I can't remember, was it Carrie that said, you're not going to annoy us because we've heard it all. But a student that's tenacious that said, I'm really concerned about XYZ, can you check? That is never, ever, ever going to be scoffed at, ever, especially during a pandemic where there's so much unknown. So I am more than happy to get an email from a student. I don't have a territory, but if a student emails me asking for an app status check, I will absolutely check their status. And so for a student to be tenacious, but also trust the system, because this is it's a complicated system. Higher ed is a complicated system, but we have steps in place, we have resources in place, and the human resources that are in these admissions offices are equipped to educate and to move students through the enrollment process.
Okay, so I am circling back again to the transcript. So this one counselor, and I think this is a good point to make, she said the schools they're sending the transcripts to is saying they're blurry. So this is coming directly from the school. Have you all seen that? And what do you think could be causing that?
I personally have not seen that. I wouldn't know where to start. I personally have not seen blurry transcripts from any of the schools that we service.
I would say it'd be a scanning issue. And for us, we have invested in some scanning apps to make sure that it's not just a picture being taken of a document, that the app on your phone is actually a scanner that can help make the document clearer. Obviously this is not an advertisement, but I use an app called ProScan, and we purchased a house using a scanner on a cell phone because that's so readily available these days. I would think it's a scanning problem, but I'm not certain, and we haven't had that issue.
And an idea would be if a college admissions counselor has told you that, or someone who receives those documents, maybe the next time that you scan one, just test it, send it to yourself, and see and see if you're having trouble reading it. Then obviously they are. And once you see that that's the problem, you might be able to play with the settings on your scanner.
Even then, I will say I have an iPhone, and you can scan through the Notes app. So if you if you press the little plus button, you can scan it. So you do not. I don't know if you paid for your app, Kathleen. I don't know if you paid for it.
But I shouldn't.
Fantastic.
Okay, so another question, and this one, Neil, might be geared towards you, but it can go to anyone, honestly. So it says they've partnered with their local community college to come in and help with the FAFSA, like you mentioned before. Still, the students who didn't complete it during that session, they feel like it's due to the part that they have several students who have chosen the virtual option. They say this has been the hardest year, and they've had to get parents to come in and help complete the process. Do you have any suggestions on how to get them to complete the FAFSA process?
That is a tough one. Again, students who have chosen the virtual option, families who have chosen the virtual option, it's going to be more difficult to get a message out to them. Maybe not more difficult to get the message out to them, but to get them to hear and respond to the message. And so I think that I'm saying this at the risk of guidance counselors throwing something at me, but I think, and this may be impacted by the size of your school, by the size of your senior class. But I think individual phone calls, it's one thing to put out an email to everyone saying, hey, this is something that everybody needs to do. Everybody needs to be thinking about the FAFSA. But if there's a phone call that, and I know that there are probably teachers at your school who would be happy to help make this call, or if you know that a school is considering attending one of our colleges, and you want to give a list of names to the admissions counselors here saying, hey, here are the students who haven't completed a FAFSA, but we know that they are considering attending your school. I know that our people would be happy to place some phone calls to say, hey, we haven't received your FAFSA yet, but we want to help you through that process. It's much easier to hide behind an email because you realize, hey, I'm not the only one who got this, but it's not as easy to hide behind a phone call or an individual text, or even an individual email. So that's something to consider, but I'm not trying to add more work to the guidance counselors. Please don't misunderstand me.
But I think that's a great support. Like if, admission counselors can call the students, that would be a great support to the counselors.
Did anyone else have any FAFSA completion tips? No, okay. Well, let me check through the chat box one more time.
And while you're doing that, I want to go ahead and acknowledge all the counselors on this call. Happy Counselors Week. Thank you again for all the work that you all are doing. And it's kudos to you all. Thank you.
All right, well, I think we got all the questions. On behalf of the Alabama Possible team, I want to thank everyone, our panelists, our audience, for being engaging and just being here today. And I want to say Alabama Possible is here as a resource to you, as to support you as you support your students. So stay connected with us, and you all, thank you again and have a great day.